how are you? We are sitting here with Alek Ackerman, Aston Martin Toronto.
Yes, thanks for coming, Brian.
Hey, thank you for having me, much appreciated.
Welcome to our I would call it humble abode. It's quite the abode.
Oh my goodness, what a place. If you haven't been here yet, this is an enthusiast heaven times 10, I would say.
Yeah, we have always been, Grand Touring has always made this fantastic car culture.
Yeah.
In every area of the country that we've, established one of our facilities. And it all started here in Toronto. So it goes without saying, Toronto being the largest market in all of Canada, we had to have a really special facility here. And our owner, Paul Cummings, he's a remarkable businessman with an incredible vision, and he made this real, I guess, mega facility for cars a reality.
That's right. And so I noticed, we have Aston Martin. I noticed Lamborghinis here, Rolls Royce, Bugatti.
Yep.
So they are all subdivisions of Grand Touring automobiles.
So Grand Touring it's kind of run almost like a multinational, but what we are is the finest collection of cars that are available in Canada.
Yes.
And we represent a total of 14 OEMs now. We break this into sort of three classes. We have luxury, super luxury, and hypercar.
Right.
And, most recently, I think we've all seen Bugatti at some point at a car show or at least on the internet.
Yes.
That was our first foray into hypercar.
Okay.
But since then, we've welcomed to the family Koenigsegg.
Yes.
Rimac.
Yes.
Pininfarina.
Yes.
And even now Hennessy.
Yes.
And then some even more obscure and boutique brands like Zagato, which have collaborated with Aston Martin for years. So it was a natural thing to welcome them to our family here in Canada.
Yeah. And what do you think the intention is when we look at Koenigsegg, when we look at some of these very elite brands who are choosing this dealership to represent them nationwide? Yeah. Why do you think that this is the dealership?
Well, I can't speak to that entirely, but it's my belief that they see we're doing something really special.
Yes.
And when they see the kind of culture that Grand Touring brings, they feel like we're the right family to be a part of.
That's right.
So, it really brings me joy to see just how awesome the group is today. It's always been awesome, but we've been able to share that with more people than ever and really bring some amazing car culture to Canada.
Yes. And speaking of car culture, so, I think this really well goes in line with what I do and with what Autostrada magazine does, which is we're really trying to bridge that gap between motorsport and pop culture.
Yes.
And, when you look at the brands over here and we start to see lifestyle in terms of clothing, in terms of, the way things are marketed, and the appreciation that we want clients to have when purchasing a vehicle. This is not just a vehicle you're purchasing. This is also a lifestyle movement that's ingrained deep within your soul.
That I think probably there's no mark that connects better than that than Aston Martin.
Yes.
Because Aston has always been, for a lot of us, the first time we would have ever seen an Aston Martin might have been in, silver screen with James Bond.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And there is very much a lifestyle associated with that, a glamorous lifestyle.
Yes,
and, for me, the first time I ever saw one, my father, the very first VHS tape going back a few years ago, he ever gave me was Goldfinger.
Okay.
And he said, you're going to enjoy this. And I did.
Okay.
And the DB5 is, again, it's ingrained in pop culture, not just as an iconic vehicle.
Yes.
There are many iconic vehicles.
Yes.
It is the most iconic and recognizable vehicle of all time.
That's right.
Now that's an unbelievable thing when you think about it, because to be the most iconic, it's an unbelievable
It is.
An unbelievable accolade. The car though itself, the thing I find fascinating is that whole collaboration took place essentially over a couple letters back and forth.
Yeah.
And real desperation on behalf of Harry and Cubby, who were creating the James Bond franchises. They wanted to have the Aston Martin.
Yes.
And Aston Martin didn't really know who they were.
Okay.
And Aston Martin kind of trusted them and said, all right, here's a fun fact, the actual film was shot with a DB4 Mark IV.
I was just about to ask you about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was shot originally with a DB4.
Right.
And that car was rebranded as the 5 because that was what was available.
Right.
And aesthetically, they were identical.
Right.
And they basically, I mean, the cost associated with just manufacturing all those gadgets on it was exponentially more than the cost of the vehicle.
Yes.
But it was a process, to say the least.
Yes.
To get there. Right?
That's right. Because I think the DB5 at the time was actually a concept vehicle. It wasn't even a real production vehicle at the time, I believe.
So the David Brown era is an interesting one, and I could talk about history for a while because I geek about that.
Yeah.
There was in the Americas, it started with the Mark III, which was not referred to as a DB car at that point.
Okay.
It was just an Aston Martin Mark III.
Yes.
And then after that was the first time you saw David Brown's name attached to it. So it was DB4.
Okay.
Then DB5. DB6, 7, 9, 11, and then finally now, most recently, the 12.
Right.
So this is an uninterrupted bloodline. Okay. And I don't think a lot of people connect that their DB11 is just the most recent iteration of what Sean Connery drove. Or, you know, the other thing too is if you go back further, that was motor racing. And motor racing with the 4, we were very, very successful.
Yeah.
With the DB4 GT and the GT Zagato.
Right.
Then afterwards, again, now pop culture has taken over.
Right.
The EB6 was the car that the actual jet set could get.
Right. Okay.
So people like, you know, Paul McCartney and Mick Jagger and Twiggy, they actually had DB6s because the 5 was already out of production.
Okay. Wow.
So it's interesting. Out of all those, though, the glory generation, personally, the 6 is the one to drive. Okay. I love the 6.
Okay.
It's a real peach to drive.
It is. Okay. And I've never driven one, but I'm taking your word for it.
We'll get you behind the wheel of one of them soon.
That would be amazing.
We'll get you behind the wheel.
That would be amazing. And so, just to sort of play off what we were just talking about on a little bit of a side note, the car that you bring to Autostrada, where we did Bowmore collaboration, which was amazing. Shout out to James Neal, because watching you two open that up was absolutely amazing, by the way. Yeah,
well, me and James were like, you know, I'm sure a lot of people can relate with this. In high school, you have like your mischievous friends. You guys get in way too much trouble. Right. Me and James are the ones who get in way too much trouble. Okay. We get in trouble with the cars, and when we get to the destination, we get in trouble with
Right.
You know? That's kind of how we roll. But James is fantastic. The synergy that we have between Bowmore and Aston Martin. Again, it's the craftsmanship, attention to detail, and the history. You know, Bowmore has exponentially been around longer than our mark. And we've all been around for 110 years. Right. So we talk about artisanal craft, and they really understand that, and that's why we value that partnership so much. It's really genuinely remarkable. When we were at the Autostrada event, I wanted to showcase extraordinary Aston Martins. Yes. And you know, in our modern series of production, we have produced a number of extraordinary vehicles in the last few years. So when we were there, we showcased a manual transmission Vantage, one of just a handful that was ever transacted in the Americas, and in an exceptional color that was, without question, the only manual transmission in that color. That dates to the Great National Race of 1919, the very first time a car from England was painted in green. So the origination, arguably, of British racing. And then we brought an exceptional specimen of the DBS Volante, which just words can't really describe it. It's a whole series of textures and colors of blue reoccurring throughout the specification. And this is really leaning on what we do with the Q Commission Department of Aston Martin. And how bespoking, you know, you can order a custom tailored suit off the rack when off the rack isn't good enough. And the same can be said about our cars. An Aston Martin is never just built. They're always commissioned. So, you know, we only build in our sports cars about 3,500 cars per year for the planet. Wow. You know, as a spot of context, the dealership behind us on the other side of the river, they sell that many cars from the one dealer. Wow. So we are a tiny speck in the grand scheme of things. You know, and I oftentimes would compare that to, you know, in high horology with brands like Patek Philippe or Vacheron Constantin. They are really, in the grand scheme of the watch industry, tiny. However, you know, there's conscientious care that goes into the way they build things.
That's right.
And craft
That's
that
right.
comes from expertise of decades, generations
Yes.
of,
Yes.
you know, artisanal
Yeah.
watchmaking.
Yeah. And we touched a little bit on the next segment I kind of want to get into, which is this elusive Q factor. What is the Q factor exactly?
So when you acquire an Aston Martin, the level of bespoking that you see on the configurator on the website is really just the tip of the iceberg,
Okay.
Metaphorically, to what can be done. We give people, I suppose you could say, certainty with what can be done with this, but every single car is done by hand.
Yes.
So really, the limitations when ordering a car from us, when bespoking a car, is only what your mind can come up with. And when we explore things with Q, this is where we really get to shine and make remarkable commission cars. So oftentimes people will come to me with, you know, with bold intentions, especially on limiteds and rare cars. I'll give you a great example. Recently, we did a series that you may have heard of, the V12 Vantage. So incredibly limited production car, of which just 249 roadsters were ever assembled for the planet. So one of the lucky individuals who acquired an allocation on this car, they came to me and they said, I would like to design the vehicle inspired by this interesting phenomenon, which is the mist that rises up over the Niagara Falls. You know, he had pondered it. He's been many times to Niagara Falls, and he looked out over the mist, and it would change color depending on what time of day, and what time of year. So what we did is we painted the car with a unique paint that is comprised of crushed glass. So depending on the time of day and the time of year, the color itself will change. And it shifts from a silver to a blue, very much like the mist that rises up from the falls. Now that is not uncommon for Aston Martin. It's a paint color that takes approximately 60 production hours to do. So spot of context, a series production vehicle from a regular mark, like across the road, from start to finish will take 6 hours. So we're 60 hours for the paint. So a remarkable paint. Then what we did is every area that is available on the V12 Vantage to have exposed carbon fiber, that box was selected. So things like the splitter, side sills, diffuser, mirror caps, the whole exterior bonnet, and then woven of a blue carbon fiber. So it looks as though the Niagara River and then the mist that rises up over it, metaphorically, is the car. And this is the kind of thing that Q can help make to a reality. And obviously Q is named after the sort of Skunk Works division of, you know, in the James Bond franchise. It's obviously quite inspired and drawn with our brand. When Q really feels, though, that they can stand behind the project, not stand behind it, but rather the project is exceptional, they'll actually reward the owner with commissioning badges. Which sort of act as a certificate of authenticity that it's a Q project. We were very honored that that example was given the Q badge. Which is, you know, just a handful in the world.
Amazing. And I think, you know, just by listening to you talk about the processes going through some of this stuff, and we talk about the detail, the history, things build upon each other.
People really care about that with our brand because, you know, everything requires conscientious care. And again, for the automotive industry, a 110-year-old company, we're the second oldest mark in sports cars beside Bugatti. So we far exceed the timeline of marks like from anything from Italy, as an example, And that's a really remarkable thing when you think about it.
It is.
So we take that conscientious care, or at least I do, in every single specification, and we try to elevate it. Take it next level.
And it sort of brings me to my other thought right now, which is that how amazing you are as a specialist that you get to get involved in helping spec these cars.
It's a really, sometimes I pinch myself at the opportunity to do this. You know, the job role is an interesting one. you know, you come into the office every day, you're meeting with these exceptional people who live these incredible lives.
Yeah.
And really what my task is to I'll make their dreams come true.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Which is remarkable when you think that these people experience the most incredible things as it is.
Yeah.
So for us to be able to deliver that
Yes.
is it's not a challenge, but it's a remarkable thing to set forth and do.
Yeah,
right?
Must be.
And we have so much fun with it.
Yeah.
I have a lot of fun with it. But further than that, as the brand manager for Aston Martin with Grand Touring, I am the direct communication to the OEM. So I'm the one who's on communicating with them on bespoking alterations.
Right.
I'm deeply connected with that. Now we have further support because of the high level of content we've been doing in our region.
Yeah.
We just opened this unbelievable flagship store on Park Avenue in New York City.
Okay, right.
And, you know, that facility is designed to help support people like myself to make these remarkable vehicles come to fruition.
Wow.
And I feel like these next 7 years, because Aston Martin has gone forth and said, at the year 2030, we will be a battery electric car company.
So I keep hearing, yes.
These are the last 7 years in internal combustion. Wow. I get this sense from everyone in the company that they want to make these years count.
Yes.
And they
100%.
want the cars that turn out.
Yes.
You can never redo it.
No. That's right.
You can never do it again.
Right.
So it's measure twice, cut once.
Yes.
Make these exceptional vehicles.
Like,
let's do stuff we never thought we could have.
Yeah.
Let's do stuff that the rest of the industry isn't doing. Let's just do some special stuff.
Yeah. Which will eventually lead into being major icons.
Yeah.
And, you know, we think about, you know, I watch Barrett Jackson. I'm part of Coast to Coast auctions as well. And we're always looking at cars and thinking, you know, let's look at the group that's falling in love with this car right now, because as they get older and they become more affluent after working very hard and achieving their goals and successes, and they become more affluent, you can see that there's almost a yearning to go back to pick up some of those cars that were their first loves. And now Aston Martin now is creating and setting up a situation whereby when these cars become, you know, restos, whatever it is, the uniqueness and the artistic nature of these cars will be well into the future as well.
It's really interesting because you look like the other portion of what I do, which not everyone perhaps is aware of, the owners club is very, very integral in the Americas. We have close to 3,000 members across the Americas.
Wow.
So huge amount of people who own Astons become part of the lifestyle, become part of the club. Because it all goes together. And so I'm head of the club for the region from essentially the eastern side of Canada, right up to Calgary. But in addition to that, I'm also on the board of directors for the Americas. So you get to have these really interesting conversations with vintage car owners, classic collectors, people who are in 4s and 6s and Mark 3s, really, really interesting stuff. And those, if you look at the back catalog of products that Aston Martin has produced that could routinely transact in 7-figure amounts. It's actually a huge list of vehicles. And you get this sense that what we're doing right now, the ink's not dry. We're writing the last chapter of this beautiful book. And it all goes together, man. It all goes together. So there's a lot of that's actually probably one of the biggest weights in my job. Is coming into the office and knowing that we got to make it count. We got to make it count for these people. We have to make their dreams come true.
That's right. Amazing. Before we get into the design studio, I just want to talk about two very special cars that I got to check out earlier. If we can talk about this car right here in front of us with this amazing matte paint job. What is it, number one? I believe it's one of the V12s, correct?
No.
Okay.
So it is a limited series car. It's a very tricky car to get a hold of. This is a Formula 1 edition.
Right, because it said F1 edition at the side.
Now, that badge carries a lot of weight. And in the case of this car, this is the first time since another English marque, McLaren. I don't like to usually name names. Another English marque, since they wore the F1 badges back in the 1990s.
Right.
So It is a product of Aston Martin Lagonda,
Okay.
but it's also a product of the Formula One's governing body, the FIA. So this is a road-going, street-legal version of the safety car that leads the pack all around the world.
Wow.
And we offer them in a series of colors.
Yeah.
I think it probably goes without saying
Yeah.
that the Aston Martin Formula 1 green is the most popular.
Yes, yes.
However,
Yes.
it is available by special request,
Yes.
special wishes,
Yes.
in a satin black
This is
finish.
that black, yeah.
So this is, talk about crazy production hours.
Yeah, yeah.
The difference between satin and matte.
Yes.
Matte can be done much faster.
Yes.
Satin takes more production hours.
Yes, yes.
That is an absurd paint job
Yeah.
to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it's quite an unorthodox car.
Okay.
It actually, when you look at it, you go, maybe it is a 12. And it,
Right, that's why.
nothing against you, because a lot of people would think,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's just a niche within a niche,
Okay.
and only a handful of you get
So what
delivered.
power plant's in it then?
It is a derivative of Vantage's regular engine.
The V8
The
twin turbo 4 liter.
Correct. 8
Okay.
cylinder twin turbo micro block V8.
Okay.
It produces more power, different suspension tuning,
Okay.
a whole host of alterations. You probably saw the carbon seats on the inside.
Yes, yes, beautiful.
Those
Beautiful.
were first debuted on the Zagato iteration of the DBS Superleggera.
Okay.
So very, very rare
Yes.
things.
Yes. Now, I do believe then that if it's the 4 liter V8, then that's the AMG engine, correct?
It starts its life off in a Felterbach.
Okay.
So it's built by
Okay.
AMG,
Right?
but there's so many alterations that are being done onto these engines
Yeah.
that it's not unsimilar to some collaborations that they've had in past with marques such as Pagani.
Yeah.
Where
yeah.
it's like even the way that the cylinders fire are different.
Right.
It's quite a remarkable
Yeah.
alteration.
Yeah.
Same with the 707, our new DBX.
Yes. Yes.
There is no 707 PS AMG.
Right.
sits
No.
today.
No. That's
So-
right.
And
That's
we
right.
thought that would make sense to put it into our daily. per
Right.
se,
Right. Right. Amazing.
Right.
Amazing. Let's talk about that blue beauty over there.
Yeah.
What is it? What's it about?
So this is a really rare car.
Okay.
If we talk about the very early days, the infancy of the Super GT class,
Yeah.
which us and Ferrari have been going tit for tat
Yes.
for many, many years.
Yes.
This was one of the two first vehicles that created that class.
Okay.
We went motor racing, as did Ferrari, and the two brands were competing in the pinnacle of motorsport in the late 1950s and 60s,
Okay.
or beginning of the 1960s.
Right.
And Aston Martin was racing with our DB4 GT, one of the V8s getting fired up right now. That car was extremely competitive until Ferrari came about with a car called the 250 short wheelbase
Yes.
Berlinetta.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
went back to the drawing board in the hopes that we could engineer ourselves out of a problem.
Right.
And we came to a moment actually of humility for our mark. We ended up empty-handed.
Okay.
So what Aston ended up doing was collaborating with an Italian coach builder, Zagato. And they produced for us just 19 examples of the DB4 GT Zagato
Right.
with these incredible lightweight alloy panels on them. Those cars now are worth tens of millions of dollars. And we happen to have one of them in the showroom here today.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So thank you.
Talk about the specking.
We're going to move on in 1 minute. We're going to get reset up and we're going to go over to the design studio.
Yeah.
One of the places
My
that
days.
I see on Instagram and other places, and I'm just overwhelmed that I'm actually in this place. It's very surreal for me. So I cannot wait to get over there. And we're going to see you back in about 2 minutes. All right, perfect.